All right. Hello, everybody. There's a couple of y'all on already. Um, if you are watching this on a recording later off my YouTube channel, something like that, please feel free to skip ahead a couple of minutes. We've got about 4.5 minutes until this starts. So this is kind of the unofficial beginning, if you will, going on right now. So don't feel like you have to sit through the next couple of minutes. Likewise, if you're already tuning in and turning this on, right now, the official start doesn't happen until it's actually noon here in Arizona. As you know, if you've been on mine before, on the official Verizon time clock, aka the thing that I rule my life by, which is whatever Verizon tells me is the time of day. So while we're getting started, though, before we actually kick off, if you want to drop me a note either in the Q&A or the chat and just say, hey, tell me how you're doing, that would be nice. Because I know there's a lot of things going on. I also want to point out I'm pretty excited today about my new t-shirt. So it's actually framing up kind of nicely here. It does say you're on mute is what it is. But I thought in the era of Zoom and whatnot, this is probably a pretty relevant piece for everybody. Yeah, so thank you. Somebody just wrote in and said, love the t-shirt. Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate that very much. So yeah, as we're getting started, I invite you just kind of get comfy, get present if you can. We got a couple more minutes till the official webinar kicks off. But yeah, just kind of relax, settle in for a little bit. This is time that hopefully you've scheduled just for this, which really goes to my primary purpose around really being present in what we do. So if there's one thing that you could do, and feel free to drop something into the chat or into the Q&A, I can pick it up in either place. Like what's one thing that you could do just to be really, really present just for the time that we're actually in this webinar, and just share that. We'll share that a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and pop open my screen here. You hear all sorts of horror stories about people inadvertently sharing the wrong screen, or something else popping up on their screen. So yeah, it's 2020, anything could happen. It's possible. It's totally possible. So yeah, so again, if you haven't been to one of my webinars before, or if you had, it's been a couple of months, so here's just a quick reminder. I'm very strict on starting on time, ending on time. So we're still kind of in the lead up, last minute and a half or so before we get kicked off. But I do love to hear from you. It's really helpful for me to know kind of where my audience is at as you're coming into these sessions, so that I can kind of speak directly to that. And I'll mention it in the opening, but just as always, drop in something into the Q&A at any point into the chat. You can send it just to me. I'm not going to read your name out and tell everybody what your intimate question was, but if there's something specific that you showed up for here today, I want to make sure that that's kind of integrated in, because sure, I have this sort of, overarching topic, what's something that I want to talk about, but really these are for you. And this topic specifically, this kind of career series, was at the request of some folks from the League of Women in Government. So my national partner with this. So if there is something, I want to make sure that we have space for that. So the sooner you can drop that in and let me know, that would be absolutely amazing. So thanks. It's nice to see everybody popping in here today. Yeah, and if like I said, if something specifically is going on, let me know that, and we can make sure that it's kind of woven in amidst all of the general content kind of that I'm planning on bringing in. So all right. And yeah, I appreciate the chat messages. Some people are like, I'm doing great. Some people are like, what day is it? I have no idea what's going on. We're kind of coming from across the board here. So, okay. It is now noon on the dot on the official Verizon time clock. So we are going to go ahead and get started. And thank you. I saw a question just come through the chat. I'll make sure that we weave that in as we go. So, okay. So 2020, here we are. We're in another round of my webinar series here, which we're really going to focus on what I'm calling taking hold of your career trajectory. So take hold of that trajectory. What are 3 kind of segments that are important to be thinking of, even in the middle of a pandemic? What should we be thinking of as we think about our job searches? Because not all of that stops simply because there's this major, gigantic, earth-shattering, earth-shaking world event going on. So today's session is really about how you differentiate yourself and what you could do now to stand out as a candidate for your next job. Because whether you're in the search or not, everything that you're doing is important for getting you to that next step, getting you into that next job, really where you want to be. Now, right now, this is my favorite meme. I'm a meme fan if you've seen my stuff before. And I love this. What year is it? You're like, 2020. Like, ooh, sorry. Things are a little crazy right now. But like I mentioned, that doesn't mean that we don't still have to put attention into critical areas like our career development. So that is why I'm partnering with the League of Women in Government. Again, they're an amazing organization, all kinds of resource. Check them out on their website. Make sure you get signed up for their newsletters. And thank you to them for partnering with this to really get it out there to a lot of folks. Today, like always, we're going to be doing content and Q&A. So I'll have a little bit of stuff that I want to teach. And then mostly I want to have some room for the questions that are coming in. And we have a couple of them already in there. So thank you for those in the queue. I'm going to weave them in as we go. So really today is really about these kind of tangible takeaways. What are things that you do now to make you stand out as a candidate later? So beyond just, I'm not doing cover letter, I'm not doing resume in this. This is really about actionable items and strategies that you should be deploying now to make sure that you're ready in that next process and that you kind of have the things around you to succeed that way. So what you do now matters, again, whether or not you're in a job search for that next thing. So I've got 6 core pieces of advice, 6 strategies for today. And again, just go ahead and submit those questions. We'll weave them in either as we go along or at the very end. So the first one is degrees and certificates and courses. Oh my, I get this one a lot. Hey, I have a bachelor's degree, but I'm thinking about getting, another certification in the same subject area, or I have a master's degree and I'm thinking about getting a certificate in the same area. Here's my general thought on these. Degrees, certificates, and courses, I think should be used to shore up areas where you have gaps, either in your actual knowledge or in minimum qualifications. So if all of the positions that you're looking at require a master's degree and you don't have one, that may be something to consider. However, if you have a bachelor's in public policy, you have a master's in public administration, and now you're going to tell me that I'm considering a certificate in public management also, I would ask you, what does that add that you don't already have? So utilize anything like those training programs, the courses, the certificates, really to kind of think of it as shoring up gaps or filling in some of those boxes that you need to check for minimum qualifications. If you just love being a student of the subject, that's great, but it really may or may not have a direct return on investment or ROI in terms of your career development, which is okay. But just if you find yourself going, I really want to work in planning, I'm going to go get a second certificate in public administration, I would say you should probably put that time into planning instead. So the reason for this being, all of those things usually cost money. All of those things definitely take time. And anytime you're putting into a training program, whether it's certificate based, just, completion based, or an actual degree, means it's time taken away, one, from doing the work that you need to get done, and 2, really being able to put that time and energy into building relationships that might be helpful, which is the next webinar in the series, or actually into the job search itself. So you might find higher or better uses of that time. Okay. So Indiana Jones, this is from the movie, one of the Indiana Jones movies. If you are outside of the age range where this is a relevant quote or clip or movie photo right there, I apologize. But in this, Indiana Jones has to choose which of the cups to drink from. And one of them is, like he'll be fine and, have eternal life. And the other one will essentially kill him. And so the knight that's responsible for protecting all of the Holy Grails basically says choose wisely. And so I always encourage people, leverage your existing position. A lot of people don't think of that as an asset necessarily to the extent that I think it could be in getting your next job. But I say choose your projects wisely. What I mean is this. So leveraging your position means you utilize the fact that you're currently in a workplace of some type, that you have access to a certain amount of people, you have access to a certain amount of processes that you can observe or actively be part of. And so how can you utilize that to shore up gaps in your skills or gaps in your resume, even if it's outside of your actual existing role? So case in point, years ago, more years than I care to admit, I was a management analyst in a planning department. And I didn't have a technical background as a planner. I was coming through my MPA program and my Master's of Public Administration program, for if there's anybody on that's not actually working in local government right now, but was in that planning department in a management assistant role. And I knew I wanted to get into finance. I knew I wanted to work in budget. I knew I wanted to work in a city manager's office. I wanted to try out some of these other departments, but I was feeling kind of pigeonholed. Now, in my actual role, there wasn't a whole lot of latitude. The role kind of was what it was. I prepared packets for the planning commission. I, did some budget management, which basically meant like putting in POs and data entry into the system. And it was pretty, fairly similar to like an administrative assistant role where it's really responsive to what the other people around me needed. What I did though was I made sure I built really great relationships with people outside the department, specifically in areas that I was interested in learning. And along the way, lo and behold, some of those opportunities started to arise. So one of the relationships that I happened to build was in the fire department. And I got to know the fire chief really well. And budget season rolled around and I said, hey, if I could work it out with my current boss, so being very respectful of the work that I had to do, could I come observe some of your internal budget meetings? Because I want to understand how a budget is created, and I'm not going to get that really in my role. And so with his permission, I went back to my boss, asked for that time, and then I got to sit in on some of those meetings. Now I was kind of a fly on the wall. I wasn't really doing anything other than observing, but it was really a good opportunity for me to get that kind of learning lab going. One of the other things I did early in my career, and this was, I think, while I was still an intern in my very first community I ever worked for, was that community had a very large event called the Salsa Festival. And I volunteered to work the city booth all day at Salsa Festival, which if you know me, that's not typically my favorite thing to do. I don't know that it's anybody's really typically favorite thing to do. But what that did is it gave me visibility and it gave me the chance to really meet a lot of people in a compressed amount of time. So this is where choose your projects wisely comes in though. If you've been in your role for 15, 20 years, you volunteering at Salsa Festival probably isn't going to have the same ROI as it would for someone who is just starting out in their career, unless your goal is to become an events coordinator. So again, look for these things that either shore up a skill gap or put you into a position to more strategically build relationships with other people. And you can usually do that in the setting that you're in. Okay, number 3, show authentic interest in others and let them be authentically interested in you. For my beautiful, lovely introverts in the audience, this does not mean you have to all of a sudden become life of the party, super gregarious, way outgoing, absolutely out there. That's not what it means. What it means, though, is that you intentionally take time to display that to other people. I genuinely like to know how you're doing. I'd love to hear how that project is coming. I know you were excited about it. Hey, I heard you went on vacation a couple of weeks ago. What was the best part of it? So kind of getting beyond that saying hi in the hallway thing, or connecting on LinkedIn, or maybe waving at a conference back in the olden days when we still had conferences where we could physically be together. But really take that extra minute or two, send the email to check in with somebody, but show that authentic interest in others. Why that makes you stand out as a candidate is because it will build this really powerful reputation and network of people who know you. Now I'm going to go into this like way more in depth next time around building an army of advocates, which is my term for, that group of people that are really willing to help you. On the flip side, allowing them to be authentically interested in you. And this goes for when you're in an interview. I know there's a question in the Q&A about interviews. Allowing them to be authentically interested in you, like giving a little bit more than that very, very surface level, is going to do the one of the most effective things that you can do to stand out as a candidate is really connect with people. And a very specific way that you can do this, if you're ever in an interview process of any type, from the person who you sign in with at the front desk, to the person that walks you to the room that you're interviewing with, to the people around the table, really seek to be authentically interested in them. I know you're going to be distracted by what's coming up, what you're trying to think of your answer, this, that, but those are all interview opportunities along the way. I always say every interaction is an interview. Those are all interviews. If you're ever in a group context for an interview, absolutely critical that you connect with your other interviewees. So anybody else, even though they're your competition, I guarantee you people are watching. I've seen this over and over again as I've conducted interviews and job searches, or as I've participated in them, that it's noticeable when there's not that authentic connection building. Because who do you want to bring onto your team? A candidate that's able to do that, especially in public service. So critical that they're able to kind of reach out and forge some of those bonds. Okay, so I'm not going too deep because somebody had asked, do you have a webinar planned on interview tips? I don't have an entire one planned, although I might, now that you asked for it. Maybe I'll throw that together, but I'll weave them in a little bit. And I'm going to give you a couple here. So this is my favorite meme around interviews. During a job interview yesterday, I poured some water into a cup. It overflowed slightly. Nervous? Asked the interview. I replied, nah, I always give it 110%. Like, wouldn't you love to be able to think on your feet that well during an interview? I don't. My nerves take over. I get concerned. I get distracted. So a couple of tips around this to help you tame the tension before and during. And then two, in an interview setting, you really want to communicate to connect and think about what do they need. That's a differentiator in terms of how you really shine in that process. So tame the tension before. There's a couple of you on here that I've given this advice to. Here's what I do, and it sounds silly, but this is honestly what I do. Some is science-based, some of it's totally not. So, take it or leave it. Do 10 squats, like the up and down. So if you need to go to the bathroom and do it, or do it outside your car in the parking garage before you go in, whatever it is, your thighs contain the largest muscles in your body. So like the actual biggest muscles in your body, which means they have the most blood flow. So when we're nervous, we go into fight or flight. What happens is the blood drains from our frontal lobe, which is where our highest cognition, decision-making happens, and it goes to the extremities of the body, which means a lot of it's going to pool in your thighs. So when you do 10 squats, what you're going to do is force that blood to get moving out of your muscles, which will circulate it not just through your body, but actually give it a chance to rush back up into your brain. So you're going to be able to have a fully loaded frontal lobe, which is how you want to go in. Proprioceptive input is a strategy I've shared before. It's essentially joint compression. So you can do it by pushing your palms together. You can do it right now. It's not going to look that crazy. And you just get a really nice compression on your wrists. So you should feel it here and kind of in the bottom parts of your hands. Get a really nice compression, 5 to 10 seconds. And then when you release it, what happens is that release of the compression on your joints signals your autonomic nervous system and says, okay, relax. So it's actually going to help you deal with your body and make it relax. That's a really common strategy used in occupational therapy for people who have sensory processing disorders or those on the autism spectrum. It's really commonly used, but it works for pretty much everybody. And then last one, not scientific at all. It's just always helped me is clap 10 times, like as loud as you can, get like a really good crack. It just kind of seems to loosen me up a little bit. Go on in to what you're doing next. Now, during the interview, 3 tips. Number 1, practice bubble breathing, which is a breathing technique, which you could do. I've been playing with it a lot lately, but isn't super obvious to everybody else. So it's not like close your eyes and, imagine the ocean. You can't do that in the middle of an interview. Bubble breathing is just basically that your exhale feels like as if you were blowing a bubble through a bubble wand, which is a little bit harder to do than you might think. You blow too hard, it pops. You don't blow hard enough, you don't actually produce a bubble. So that kind of like nice, you just imagine it. Go buy some 99-cent bubbles and try it out. But you can do that during an interview, and that's going to help calm your nervous system again. Same thing with paying attention to your exhale. Make sure you are getting all of that air out of your lungs. Our brains measure carbon dioxide in our bodies, and if we're not exhaling fully, it will actually signal it so that we start breathing faster, which is just going to signal your body to go farther into stress. So make sure you're exhaling completely. And then stay focused on what you need to communicate in that moment. There's a lot of research around over preparing, and it's like why nothing sticks in those last couple of hours right before you go in. At some point, you will have prepared for as much as your brain is able to manage and maintain. And so when you're in the interview, just focus on the question ahead of you. Try not to think 3 steps ahead to, okay, how am I going to wrap this up? Or, why are they not making eye contact? Or like, holy cow, they're not writing anything on that paper. Is that good? Is that bad? Really, just as much as you can, think tunnel vision and stay very focused on the thing that's right in front of you. It's one of the times that I really want you to be just thinking about the next thing. All right, communicate to connect means if you were interviewing you, what do you want to hear? What would you need to hear? It's like when someone asks the question, hey, why do you want to work here? And the answer the candidate gives is all about themselves. It's great for my career. It's the next step for me, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's great. But ultimately, I need something from you as the hiring authority. So really, as you're preparing for this, think about what they would want to hear and what really might tell your story differently. Think of this ahead of time. People don't prepare for interviews oftentimes in a way that I think is effective. Draft out what would you ask if you were hiring for that position. Go through the job description, highlight relevant pieces that seem to be, in their minimum qualifications or in the description, and then pretend you're the interviewer. Craft your own questions for it. When I do mock interviews with clients, I do a lot of career counseling and career coaching. This is where it starts, is we start there. And then from there we say, did I really answer that question well? Would I have been satisfied with the answer that I gave for that? And then lastly, please manage your time. Manage your time. A lot of folks fall into this trap, talking too little, being way too brief, and talking too much. So think through, you have a 20-minute phone screening conversation. What's the likelihood that with introductions and wrap up and anything, they're going to ask you more than 4 or 5 questions? Okay, so then I know, let's say 5 questions with intro, with outro, I need to be around 3 minutes per question-ish. And then you kind of keep track of it. I have an hour-long interview. I'm going to have a little bit more time. So really think through managing your time and then stay on that, because it's really hard when you have an interview that's running like really, really long. It can get awkward. Okay. Dial in your dialogue. This is my last of the 6 tips. And this is something that would set you apart prior to an interview and would help you kind of build that powerful professional reputation that you're going to want regardless of where you're applying. But it's also a format for approaching any conversation that, again, will make you stand out because of how you're entering the conversation. And this is something that my business partner, Eric Bailey, and I, through one of my companies, Extraordinary Balance, that we've developed and we teach when we do communication workshops, when we do team coaching, and that sort of thing. So the 4 goals of dialogue, here they are in brief. Number 1, come into a conversation, even an interview, willing to learn. It doesn't mean you change your mind. It doesn't mean you shift your perspective, but even that person that you're interacting with, that it's maybe a little conflict based, maybe you're a little unsure of where they're going, maybe there's like an active disagreement going on. Can you still approach that dialogue willing to learn? And what this will do is it'll signal to the other person and anybody else observing you that you have an open mind. And that's a type of candidate that organizations want to hire. It says mind the illusion of certainty. So think of the illusion of certainty as the thing that says, when I go into a conversation, oh, I got to meet with Jim today. I already know exactly what he's going to say. I already know exactly. He just needs to get his life together and come around to my point of view. I know. See if you can set that aside and really find something to learn. Again, when you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. You need to make sure it's the right fit. Number 2, try to find the truth. If it's in like a retrospective situation, you're looking back at something that happened, or what's the best path forward here? And again, coming into that, I'm willing to learn. Now I'm willing to really find the best path forward, whether or not it's my idea, is going to signal to the people that you interact with that you have the skill that says, okay, we're going to do this together and we're going to do this collaboratively. I'm going to be someone that you want to work with, and that will really bolster that reputation of yours. So monitoring what I think happened or what I think we should do versus what's reality actually telling us. And then number 3, in these conversations, not just in an interview, but as you generally interact with people in your industry, in the nonprofits you volunteer for, through the course of your job, the people you serve, the council members you support, the manager you report to, are you still producing results in the conversations that you're having? For anybody that struggles with office chatter, like I like to go around and talk to everybody in the office, for anybody that if that's a personal challenge for one of you, ask yourself, is this producing results? Now, sometimes the result is it's making my relationship with this person better, or it's making me feel better. That's great. Just monitor how long that's taking to do. So build that connection authentically, but make sure that you're still caretaking all the rest of it. Now, if you're ever in a conversation that seems stymied, or you're working with a group and you're like, holy cow, this is going nowhere, ask this question. Are we still moving towards action? Are we still moving towards action? Be really powerful. And again, it's going to display to the people around you, you have the skills and you have the capabilities. And then when you get into an actual job search, or you're up for, maybe there's a promotion that might be opening, or a position reconsideration, people are going to say, oh yeah, Nicole, oh yeah, definitely put her in for that. She's capable. Okay, so lastly, strengthen relationships. Come into your dialogue with other people. Again, even if it's people you don't respect or dislike, willing to strengthen relationships. Doesn't mean it happens. That's why it says no matching lower back tattoos required. You don't have to come out of it like holding hands and taking selfies and going off to get tattoos together. But can your behavior signal, even to the most difficult customer that you interact with, you are willing to strengthen that relationship if they are? That will change how you show up there. Okay, so lastly, as we move into the Q&As that have come in, be willing to explore. I work with a lot of people and I say, hey, are you willing to move? Are you willing to relocate? Are you willing to switch organizations? Are you willing to switch departments? And I get this kind of like closed down, like batten the hatches, I magically want all of these opportunities to be available here. Or I get people who come in for one-on-one career coaching and they say, Nicole, I'm just really frustrated. I've been at my organization for 10 years and I'm at a dead end. There's nowhere else to go. And then I suggest looking outside and it's like I've, mortally offended them. Sometimes we have to be willing to explore even outside our own organizations. And that can be frustrating. It can be unsettling. It can feel unfair. It can feel all the things. But ultimately, if your true goal is to grow and you're in a place where that's not possible, consider opening that mindset to see, can I explore this somewhere else, or is there somewhere else that I need to go? Some of you may need to look outside industry. There's certain types of roles you want, or leadership levels, or experiences, or geographic places you want to work. And you say, well, the perfect place doesn't exist where I'm going. Well, does it exist in a different industry? Could you even look outside of that? So again, just kind of having that open mindset. And I love, if you're wondering about the graphics, this woman did like essentially a new job announcement instead of like a baby announcement. I just thought it was kind of cool, like an engagement announcement style. Okay, couple questions have come in. First one, I've made it to the top 5 candidates out of 150 and the number 2 in a recruitment about 100. When I asked for feedback, they said, don't change anything. You're doing everything right. I don't know how to get the job. So yeah, this is kind of the always the bridesmaid, never the bride scenario. Been there, done that. Totally feel how this feels. So a lot of other people on here. So sometimes for the person who asked this question, it really isn't about you. It isn't about anything you did or didn't do, need to do, degrees or certificates, oh my, that you need to obtain. It purely has everything to do with what they were looking for, and who might have been in the pool that fit the profile a little bit differently. So it is absolutely possible to come out of recruitments and not have anything to change. It's just going to be a matter of lining up with the right position. So I understand the frustration, and I can totally feel how that would be like, that's not helpful. Try and reframe like, holy cow, that's really helpful. I'm nailing it. I just got to wait for the right opportunity. And kind of put it there. So that's a little bit of one of those says easy, does hard kind of things, because it's real easy for me to say, like, you just got to wait for your right opportunity. But in some cases you do. Now, in other cases, if you came out and the recruiter was like, this was terrible, that was awful, you need to shore up this, and your outfit was inappropriate, then that would be a totally different space. So kind of see if you can see some of the good in that. But also hold a little bit of space for that frustration. For you, I think the next one in the webinar series about building an army of advocates is going to be really important, because your work should then focus on building out that network of people who can actually help you get that next job if you're already doing everything else right. Okay, second one. Oh, girl. I'd love to know if you have any tips specific to internal candidates. My dream job is promotion when my boss retires, but I'm conscious an external candidate may be viewed as new and exciting compared to me as the current deputy boss. Lots of material here. So number one, have you had that conversation with your boss or with people who would have influence over that decision around you? So make sure that you do, if it's safe and appropriate, again, depending on environment, so that they know. And they might go, hey, before we go look outside, we already got somebody awesome who we already know is interested. Let's just start there. You can also, again, depending on that relationship, think about coordinating some sort of move into an interim role that might be an assessment. So maybe the organization's not ready to go right to a direct hire or promotion, but would they consider giving you a chance to be an interim role? Number three, your boss now, if they know that they're retiring somewhat in the near future and you have a good relationship, they know you're interested. There are a lot of ways that they can help position you for that role. And so actively asking for that help, having that kind of courageous conversation to say that. Also, again, shore up those relationships internally. You want to be the internal candidate that if anybody in that hiring process told someone in the organization, we're thinking about, going out for this recruitment, you want other people around you to be like, heck no, you're crazy, just put her in it, she's ready to go. So that's a couple of things to do. Again, I think really heavy, again, on the relationships. So we are almost at the end. Just a couple of resources for you here. Some of my current programs I'm offering, coming in January, my Be Intentional coaching program. This is really for people that want to accelerate progress towards a specific goal, or if you don't know what you want, but you know you want more progress towards something, we'll help you figure it out and then give you, it's a 6-week program really designed to get you kind of from A to Z there. The Take Hold of Your Trajectory career coaching, that's also what I'm offering. All of this is on my website. If you want some really focused, specific guidance, there's an intensive coaching one-on-one, and then a longer 2-hour really deep dive into your interview and anything that's holding you back, really kind of to shore you up for that. I'll be back on November 9th for the second in this series. It's on building an army of advocates that's really strategically leveraging relationships to get you to that next place, how you build them and how you can be successful. As always, this is how you can connect with me. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, pretty easy to find, and would love to keep chatting. So we are at 12:30, almost cruising into 12:31. I'm going to sign off, but thank you to everybody for joining today. Thank you for your questions. Anything comes up in the meantime before the next one, don't hesitate to drop me an email. I'd be happy to chat with you. All right. Have an awesome day.